Welcome, everyone in the United States, Canada, and around the world to another episode of It's a Wrap with Rap, the podcast of overcomers and useful information to better our daily life and mental well being. I'm your host, Ron Rappaport. I would like to thank all our listeners, viewers, and our sponsors and supporters for making the podcast such a success. Besides being on all major platforms and YouTube, the podcast may also be accessed on our website, it's a wrap with rap.com, where you can find all the episodes, previews of future episodes, and unique products and services offered by our sponsors, as well as the podcast Book Nook, showcasing many of the books our guests have authored that may be purchased on Amazon. My guest today is Jessica Faulds, a MS survivor and warrior, women's health advocate, and plant-based nutrition expert and motivational speaker. Jess's story is anything but ordinary. Diagnosed with multiple sclerosis at 15 years old, she spent years fighting for proper care in a healthcare system that often dismissed her. Her treatments were brutal. One even left her with Legionnaire's disease and necrotizing pneumonia. At age 27, she made a bold decision to undergo a stem cell transplant. Her journey didn't stop there. Months after the stem cell transplant, Jess was diagnosed with ovarian failure and thrown into menopause at age 27. At age 30, she was diagnosed with ADHD. Jess did not let her diagnosis define her. She turned them into her why. Jess pursued degrees in health sciences and nutrition and dietetics, became a certified holistic nutrition coach, and built her expertise around plant-based living, women's health, and self-advocacy. Jess is with us today to step into her story, to share her journey with us, and to help others embrace their own definition of health, advocate for themselves, and find strength in their own chaos. From Calgary, Alberta, Canada, welcome, Jess, to the podcast.
Thank you. That was quite the intro.
Well, you got a lot of stuff there, and you've been through a lot, and yeah, we're going to talk about it. And I love the way you overcame. This is the podcast of overcomers, and we're happy to have you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, what life was like for you up to age 15. Your family dynamics, so the audience gets to know who you are.
Yeah, so I am, although I live in Calgary, Alberta, so I live on the west coast of Canada now. I grew up in Ontario. I grew up in a small town called Frankfurt, Ontario, which is about 2 hours east of Toronto. I grew up with my mom, my dad, my sister. My grandparents lived up the road from us, like aunts, uncles, cousins. Like I had a big family all around. Grew up in a very, very small town. There were 23 people in my graduating class for grade eight. I went to high school in the town next to us because our town didn't actually have a high school. My dad was my math teacher. It was just a very kind of small town family life
Yeah,
growing up. Very close knit. Like had a pool, lived on the water, lots and lots of fun.
yeah,
Pretty an idyllic childhood, really, if I'm looking back on it.
that's great. Ontario is a beautiful place. Been there several times, really like it. Now, at age 15, you are diagnosed with MS. What symptoms led to that diagnosis? And I understand you battled MS in the healthcare system you were in for proper care for 12 years. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I got diagnosed when I was 15. Only about at the time, I believe it's 2 to 3% of people are diagnosed before their 18th birthday. I woke up one morning and my left eye was frozen. So my this eye did not move. It looked straight ahead. This eye moved freely. And I did manage to hide it from my parents for a couple hours. And then my mom noticed it and said, "Cool, we're going to the emergency room."
Yeah.
Where one of the emergency room doctors told me I had a lazy eye and to go home. And
You're kidding.
then
That's what they told you?
that's what they said. He's like, "Oh, it's probably a lazy eye. If it's not fixed by Monday, go home."
Oh,
So
I
clearly
guess
we're
they wanted
here.
you out of there fast, didn't they?
Yeah, clearly he was wrong. We're here. So then I went to an eye doctor on Monday,
Yeah.
who told me I had a brain tumor. And then we got sent to an MRI in Kingston, and then I eventually ended up at Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto, where I was told that I had MS. And I will tell you that Sick Kids Hospital is an amazing hospital, absolutely incredible hospital. The doctors were phenomenal. And then when you turn 18, you transition to a grown-up hospital, the adult hospital.
Yeah.
And that was very different for me. Um, I had a neurologist who didn't want to necessarily share all the information with me. One of the medications he had me on had me at a high risk for a brain infection, and he didn't tell me that. I found that out later. So it got to me as I was doing my 2 degrees, really researching my own health, and then saying, well, I read this. Um, and this neurologist just kind of kept dismissing me and not listening to anything that I wanted to say. So I switched. I went to my family doctor and I said, I need you to send me to someone else.
Yeah.
And I ended up moving hospitals completely in the Toronto region and getting a different doctor who was much better at listening to me. But I do really believe in finding like the right fit for you. So the best neurologist I found as an adult has been out here in Calgary for me.
Okay. I know we've talked to so many people on the podcast, and it's just amazing how you really have to be your own advocate. You can't just because somebody says you have something, you can't just say, "Oh yeah, he's a doctor, he's got a degree. Must be, I don't know, as much as he does or she does." And that's really not the case, is it? You really have to
Yeah,
do
I
your own
learned
research and
how to
listen to your body.
document. Yeah, I documented everything that I was feeling. And then I am lucky. My first degree is in pre-med health sci. So I learned how to read like studies and papers. So I was reading all of these papers on the different MS treatments that were coming out and taking all of these notes. And I would actually show up at my doctor's office in Toronto with a folder. And I'm like, this is all my research. Let's have a discussion. This is what I want to do. Let's have a discussion about it. Um, and that's how I ended up switching to 2 different medications in kind of my MS journey. But I said, this is what I want to do. This medication's not working for this reason. I want to switch to this one. Let's have a discussion about this. And I'm going to be very active in my healthcare with you. So you're not just going to tell me what the options are. We're going to research it and talk.
How was that received by the physicians when you came in there with that folder?
Well, the doctor that I switched off of was not happy. I needed some paperwork for a medical accommodation for school, and he basically told me, he's like, well, your new neurologist can do it, and I won't. Um, and so he was not super happy with that approach. But my other 2 doctors, the second one that I had in Toronto, I think it took a minute for him to get used to it. He hadn't seen that approach a lot, but my neurologist out here in Calgary, we have a fantastic relationship. We have a discussion. I actually saw him like 3 weeks ago for my yearly checkup, and he comes
Yeah.
through and he's like, okay, why are you doing this? Are you doing this? And I ask all my questions, and so we have a dialogue, and it's a really respectful relationship.
The ones who didn't uh, go for your approach, were they on the older side?
Yes.
Okay, so the younger doctors were more open to your approach,
Yes,
which
that would.
doesn't surprise me because I think if they were on the older side, they probably grew up in that atmosphere where ego kind of takes over and you're just the patient, I'm the doctor.
Yep.
It's not going to work like that. But
And I always think there's a gender component to it as well.
a gender component, you think so?
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be. Could be. Now, along the treatment pathway, you encountered a system that, like you said, that dismissed you and left you with other issues to battle. Please walk us through that journey before you made your bold decision. I understand you had some really big problems along the way.
Yeah, so there's an amazing drug called Lemtrada. So Lemtrada is a drug that's for MS. It is designed, and I believe when I read the study, it halts MS progression about 80 to 90% of people who take it. And I really, really wanted this drug. My drug was not working well at the time. And so I went into my neurologist in Toronto and I said, I want this drug. This is why. And we had a discussion. And when I say this drug was brand new, he had not had anybody go on this drug yet. It
Did
was
he did
like
he hear about it?
he had heard about it, he knew about it, but
Okay.
it was so new he had not prescribed it to anybody yet. And I
Okay.
said, "Well, that's great. I can be number one. Let's do
Yeah.
it." And so I was successful. I did get the drug. Part of why we wanted this drug was because when I was 24, and then when you turn 25 and you're done school, you go off your parents' health insurance. So we didn't know, we're like, okay, MS medications are expensive when you're
Right.
off this health insurance. What are we going to do? So we did Lemtrada because it was 2 years and then you were done. So in theory, I hopefully wouldn't need other treatment and it would be easier for me to get health insurance. And so we did the first year, which involved 5 days hooked up to an IV for 9 hours. So you were hooked up to an infusion for 9 hours, 5 days in a row. So that week, my family and I drove from where I lived in Frankfurt to Kingston, so about an hour drive each way. I sat in a clinic hooked up to an IV for 9 hours.
Well,
And
nine
then
hours, it sounds to me that they had to infuse that very slowly.
very
Now,
slowly.
now my guess is the reason is it's probably, was it corrosive or something? I mean,
It was, yeah. So there's, it's basically, it was, I call it chemo light.
yeah.
So it was protected from the light. No one could use the bathroom I was using. There's all these rules. It's a very toxic substance.
Okay.
Um,
So it's like chemo.
it's like chemo.
So
Yeah.
it's killing cells, in other words.
Yep. It was
Okay.
basically, it was like an immune system reboot. The way my doctor described it is you come in and you're doing like a hard reset on the immune system and you tell your immune system you're doing a bad job, go home. And then the idea is the next year you do that again and you reset it again, and then you're in theory good to go. Um,
Now, was this an investigational drug?
nope, it's fully approved. I did it and when I was not a study when I did it, it was
Okay. So it
100% approved.
was it used worldwide?
It was used in Canada across Canada, and I believe it was and is approved in the United States. I don't know about everywhere else.
Okay. Okay.
But I believe now it's been like 8 years since I did it. So I believe
Yeah.
it's a fantastic drug. But I so I finished it on the Friday. On the Saturday, I was feeling better, and I said to my parents, I want to go back to school. I want to go back to London. It's the summer. All my friends are there. They're all having a great summer. I'm gonna drive
You're
the
talking about
four
London, Ontario.
yeah, London, Ontario.
Okay.
I said, I want to drive the 4 hours back to school. And my parents were like, okay, you can leave tomorrow, but start halfway. Go to Toronto. That's where my aunt lived. And then the next day I would go to London.
Right.
And by the time I got to Toronto, I was having severe chest pain. And so my aunt's like, that's it, we're going to emergency. And when we went into emergency, they asked if I had taken anything, and I told them about the drug. Nobody had heard of this drug. Like I said, I was my doctor's first patient on it, and he was an MS specialist.
Right.
So I'm on my cell phone like this, going, "This is my drug packet. This is the reading. Here you
Yeah,
go. Please
yeah.
read it." And they read it, and they couldn't figure anything else. And they said, "Well, we think it's just you're having kind of like an allergic reaction. You're having heartburn. You should go home and just rest." So I said, okay. So I went home. And I'm a very stubborn person. So the next morning, even though I was still having some chest pain, I woke up and I drove myself 2 more hours to London, Ontario, where I had a friend. He was very concerned for the pain that I was in. And he said, I don't feel comfortable with you staying by yourself. I lived alone. He's like, I'm not comfortable with you living by like staying by yourself tonight. Why don't you sleep on my couch? And that way someone's monitoring you if something goes
Yeah,
wrong.
yeah.
And so he turned out to be right. The next morning I woke up and I wear a Fitbit all the time. So I woke up and he said, I'm going to work. Call me if you need anything. And he left. And I looked at my Fitbit and my heart rate lying down on the couch was 170
Oh my
beats
God.
per minute. And I called my mom and I said, so I think my Fitbit is malfunctioning because it says my heart rate is 170. And my mom just happened to be at breakfast with a firefighter, first responder, and
Right.
he's like, she needs to hang up and call 911 right now. Like she needs to hang up the phone and call
Right.
911. Which
Now
I
let me
did.
ask you a question. When it was 170 on the Fitbit, how did you feel? Did you feel your heart? I mean, did you feel it?
I felt anxious,
Yeah.
but like it doesn't. I run half marathons, I box, I teach cycle class. So for me, like 170, my heart rate can go much higher. And I wasn't feeling like I was like maybe had been walking around a little winded, but I didn't
But you were
feel
this was when you were getting up, right?
no, I wasn't even up. I was still lying down. So
Yeah, no, that's
I was
not normal.
feeling
That's not normal.
No, I was feeling pretty anxious.
Maybe 60 to
Um,
100, but not that high.
and so I called 911.
Yeah.
I gave them the address to the wrong building, so I actually had to walk outside and flag them down in the road. And they took me to the hospital and they said that they're like, oh, your body's just fighting an infection. It's not a big deal. And I said, no, it is a big deal. We just wiped out, I don't have an immune system. We literally just wiped it out 2 days ago. Um, and then I said, if you're taking me to the university hospital, like where I'm going into school, you need to call, and I can't remember his name for the life of me now. Um, I said, but you need to call this doctor because
Yeah.
I know him and he is studying this drug. He works with this drug. I've had conversations with him about this drug. Even though he's not my neurologist, he can answer questions on the drug.
Right.
Please call him. And I got to the hospital. They immediately isolated me. I called my mom and I said, I think this is really bad. Something is not right here.
Yeah.
And so my mom then drove 4 hours to meet me. And she started being my advocate, and she had to be my advocate because I don't actually remember the next 5 days. Um,
Wow.
I ended up in the ICU with 10% use of my lungs. I still have the chest x-rays and they're just completely white. I had a very severe necrotizing pneumonia. Um, and so I don't remember those five
So
days.
necrotizing pneumonia. Tell our audience, what does that mean?
So I had Legionnaire's disease, which is I think it's a bacteria that you breathe in. I can't
Yeah.
remember if it's a bacteria, but you can breathe it in contaminated water. So if you're like, for me, we think I was sitting under an air conditioner, for work, and air conditioners have recycled water, so you can breathe it in there. You can breathe it in. It's as simple as if there's Legionella in the water that they spray at the grocery store, you can breathe it in. 99.9% of the population is fine if they inhale it. It's not going to do anything. Because we wiped out my immune system, I got Legionnaire's disease and I ended up attacking my lung tissue and killing it off as it was attacking it. So they called it necrotizing pneumonia.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. When they did the treatment with that drug that reset your immune system, you basically walked out of that hospital with no immunity, no immune system,
A
per
lowered
se,
immune system. Yeah.
a very lowered one.
Yeah.
Did they warn you? Like wear a mask, stay away from people.
No, well, this was all before COVID as well. This was like 9 years ago now.
Yeah,
Um, and it wasn't like I stayed at home. Like I drove, and when we look back on it, we actually believe I was exposed to the Legionnaire's disease before I went and did the treatment. So even
okay.
if I had worn a mask leaving the hospital, had already been exposed.
Yeah. Well,
And so, and like I said, it's a fantastic drug. So many people have been on it. I have friends who have been on it. I'm just that like asterisk on the drug now where they're like this happened to one person.
you're
And
an
it is
outlier.
truly, I'm an outlier. It's one person. I do
Yeah.
not blame the drug. I
Yeah.
don't blame I don't blame people that I got Legionnaire's disease.
Okay. Okay.
But it was quite the experience. I ended up in the ICU for 5 days. I don't remember that. I was in the hospital for another 9 days. I lost about 20 pounds. And I had asked the doctor, I said, well, doc, I'm scheduled to run my first half marathon in 3 months. Do you
He
think?
must have laughed at that.
Yeah, I said, do you think it's still a possibility? Like we're good to go. And he's like, you should probably try walking first. But I did run the half marathon 3 months later. I went sub 2, and then I brought the medal back to my doctor and did like a mic drop and gave it to him.
Awesome.
And I
I've
said, I
run
did
half
it.
marathons, and that's not easy. That's what,
Yeah.
13.1 miles?
Yeah, 21.1K.
Yeah. Yeah. It where did you run the half marathon? Toronto?
That one I did the Niagara.
Oh, the Niagara. Okay.
Yeah. Because I went to school at Brock was where I did my first degree, which is in the Niagara region, and I love the Niagara region.
Now, somewhere along the line you had, was it 11 rounds of chemo in 8 days? I read that
Yeah,
somewhere. What was that all about?
that's my stem cell transplant. So I
Oh, okay,
moved,
we'll get into that. Okay,
yeah.
we'll get into that. Okay. Now, moving on. Uh, at age 27, you make a bold decision. Tell us about that and the official's doctor's letter it resulted in you receiving. and what that felt like, and did it change your perspective on health and life?
Yeah, so I moved to Calgary, Alberta. I got here January 1st, 2018, like New
Okay.
Year's Day. My dad and I drove across the country. We actually drove through the States and then came back up into Canada. And I was very excited to get to Calgary. I didn't know it at the time, but I picked one of two cities in Canada that does the stem cell transplants for MS. I got it assigned a neurologist out here who I absolutely love. His name is Dr. Lou. He's a fantastic neurologist. And then he sent me for an MRI in December of 2018. And normally, what happens when you do an MRI, you do the MRI in December. I have a doctor's appointment in February. I learned the results at my doctor's appointment. But this year, I did the MRI the first weekend of December. And the next week, Dr. Lou called me and I immediately went, this is not a good call. This is not how this is supposed to work. And he said, no, it's not a good call. Your MRI is showing that your MS is progressing. So even though I had done four different treatments for my MS, and I had done the Lemtrada, which is considered one of the big three
Yeah.
in Canada for treatments, and it's supposed to control it. My MS was not controlled. It was still progressing. I was having symptoms, and he said, because it's progressing, I want you to have a stem cell transplant. We're doing them here in Calgary now. Um, I can get you in for the stem cell transplant. And I will be honest, I said some not nice words.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do the stem cell transplant. I said I did everything you guys wanted me to. I did the Lemtrada. I've done all the treatments. I almost died with the Lemtrada. Um, I'm done. Like I did everything you told me to. I
Well,
don't
I
want to
know
do.
how you feel. I'm a two-time breast cancer survivor. I've been through chemo and all that. And after a while, you almost
Like
get
I
to the
did
point.
it.
Yeah, it's like, come on now,
Yeah. I'm like,
Yeah.
I did all of this. I did everything you said. Ended up in the hospital. This was supposed to be it. I was supposed to be done. So I ended up flying home for Christmas and having, my parents have been fantastic. I have a fantastic relationship with my parents, and we kind of did like the pros and cons and what happens if you don't, and what if your MS progresses and all of these things. And it ended up with me saying, I think I should do the stem cell transplant. And my parents saying, well, we'll fly out with you in February to meet the stem cell doctor and we can decide then. So they flew out here in February. I ended up deciding to do the stem cell transplant. The first step of that is they told me that I would lose my fertility if I did the first stem cell transplant. I don't have kids yet. I know I want kids. But they said I would lose my fertility. It would nuke my ovaries. And so the first step was an egg harvest. So I was successful in harvesting 27 eggs, which are still
Oh,
in a freezer somewhere here
great.
in Calgary. I don't know
Yeah.
where, but they're here. Um, and then the next step was I did one round of chemotherapy. They put a port in my chest. I did one round of chemotherapy. Then we did these shots called GCSF shots, which were designed to pull my stem cells from my bone marrow into my blood where they could be harvested. So I did five of those shots. And then I went up to basically was kind of like a dialysis room. So it was like at the in and the out of the port, blood would come out, they'd take the stem cells out and they'd put the blood back in. I had a lovely pod member for that day because I was there for 9 hours, and it was this huge tattooed tough man. And I came in and he was like, "Oh my God, you're such a little girl." And I was like, "Thank you." And he goes, "Did you just have the worst weekend? I was in so much pain all weekend." And for him, these shots, he described it to being shot with a gun. He said it was so painful. He was in the fetal position. His bones hurt so badly the whole weekend that he did this treatment. And I was like, well, I ran 7 kilometers this morning. I had no bone pain like I had a little bone pain in my feet. I had no
Yeah.
pain. They said they harvested record numbers of stem cells from me. They did have to take out my port. I had an allergic reaction with the port. So the port came out. And then a month later, I got admitted. My parents drove across the country so they could be with me. I got admitted to the hospital in Calgary. They put a line in my arm. I had an allergic reaction with that one, so that one had to come out. They figured out I'm allergic to what they clean you with at the hospital, so they had to put a different line in with iodine. And then that's when I did the 11 rounds of chemotherapy in 8 days.
Wow. Now, Just backtracking. What made you move out to Calgary?
So there used to be these amazing kids camps called for kids with MS.
Okay.
And so there was one, it was always hosted, if people know Ontario, out by like Perth, so in the Ottawa region. It was on like the Rideau Lakes, and I went there for 4 years. And then in my final year for camp, they hosted it out here in Calgary. And I fell in love with the mountains. I absolutely
Oh.
fell in love with the mountains out here, and I said I want to live out there one day. And I
Our podcast guest, Dorsey Ross, an inspirational speaker, podcaster, and ordained minister, was born in 1977 with a rare congenital disability known as Apert syndrome, which occurs in only 1 out of 80,000 to 1 out of 160,000 people. Dorsey has authored his autobiography titled Overcomer: Discovering God's Plan Against All Odds. When Dorsey was born, his forehead was pushed outward. There was no usual soft spot or skull opening in the head to stop the brain from growing, leading him to becoming brain dead. Also, his fingers and toes were fused, meaning he had no movement in them. Doctors gave his parents no hope for his survival and advised them to put him into an institution. His parents refused to do that and trusted that God would do great things in Dorsey's life. Throughout Dorsey's life, he has had to overcome a lot of obstacles and trials, such as being bullied, called names such as monster or freak, told his future was bleak and higher education was out of the question for him. Dorsey has undergone multiple surgeries, totaling 68 in all, many in the facial area to enhance his appearance and correct medical issues that faced him due to his disability. This is not a book that is sad or a pity party of why this is happening to me, but rather a book that gives hope and inspiration to everyone reading it that having faith in God's plan for you and dispelling the untruths people may tell you about yourself, good things will be in store for your life. Who is this book for? It is such an encouraging book that everyone should read it, especially those struggling with disabilities, life problems, and doubt. Dorsey shares the incredible story of his life and how he discovered God's plan for his life. Along the way, his story will encourage and inspire you to see yourself the way God sees you and that you are loved and here for a unique purpose. The book, Overcomer: Discovering God's Plan Against All Odds, is available in paperback and Kindle format from Amazon.
moved out here on a whim when I was 26. I applied to a job, got the job, packed up everything, and drove across the country within a period of 3 weeks. Um,
That's the way to do it.
and it was the most fun.
Yeah,
It was very terrifying because I did not know a single person in Calgary. I knew no one when I moved here. My dad drove me across the country and was here for like 4 days and then flew back home.
yeah.
Um,
But
but
I'm sure you made friends.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I've got lots of friends. I have a fiance out here now,
Oh,
and
great.
we bought a
Great.
house. We built a house together last year, and
Yeah. I was supposed to go out there, like I told you offline, and still looking forward to Calgary. So we'll get out there eventually. Uh,
it's gorgeous. You'll
yeah,
never want to leave.
yeah. I mean, I want to leave it. Now, months after the stem cell transplant, you're diagnosed with ovarian failure, which obviously you knew was going to happen, right?
They said it was about 90% sure. They
Yeah,
said, realistically speaking, we want to preserve your fertility. It's a 90% risk. The chemotherapies that I did, like the one day I did 3 different rounds of chemo.
yeah.
So it was 3 different types of chemotherapy in one day. Um, and there are different levels of chemotherapy, is what I was told. And the ones that I was on were completely like they just take you down to nothing. At one point, I needed a blood transfusion because I had no
Oh,
platelets.
so they gave you really heavy heavy stuff.
Very heavy stuff. Completely like my platelet count was 4. Um,
Wow.
and if your platelet count drops below 50, you're not allowed to floss your teeth.
You're not allowed to what? I'm sorry.
You're not allowed to floss your
Oh,
teeth because
yeah.
if your gums start
Yeah.
bleeding, they won't stop. And I was
Yeah.
at a level 4.
Wow.
Yeah. It was so the chemo, like I knew it was pretty likely that I was going to go into kind of, they call it ovarian failure. It is menopause, but if it happens before 40, it's premature. So they call it ovarian failure. And that's when I really had to kind of advocate for myself because my doctor that I had, he was a great doctor for all things stem cell. But when I started having the hot flashes and I was getting really bad heartburn and all of these menopausal symptoms at 27, I went to him and I said, I want to talk to the hormone specialist. Now I want to start this. And he said, well, we like people to wait a year. We want you to wait a year to see if your hormones normalize. And I said, like, hell, I'm not going through this for a year. I'm not sleeping. I'm having hot flashes. I was having all of these symptoms. Um, and I know a lot of women, female doctors who specialize in menopause, and they said it was actually a really good thing that you did that because when you have such premature ovarian failure, we want to start you on hormone replacement therapy as soon as possible because it's not normal for a 27-year-old to have no estrogen in her system. I hadn't even reached peak bone density. So I was very adamant in I want to see a hormone specialist, and I did get assigned to a female doctor who has been my doctor for the last 6 years. And I take hormones every day because of her.
I I don't want to toot my horn or anything, but I do know what you're going through because when I had my second bout of cancer, they said it was because of too much estrogen. So I'm on two anti-estrogen. I'm on a shot and I'm on pills as well. And I do get the hot flashes, and I know exactly what you're talking about.
They're so
But
terrible.
unfortunately, I have to be on this for, well, one pill for 10 years. They wanted the shots for 10 years, and I said, no, we're not going to go 10 years, but they're going to go 5 years. But
Yeah.
I can sympathize with you because they come out of nowhere and they're horrible.
Yeah. I
I mean,
once had a hot flash. I used to work with a woman who was blind, legally blind.
yeah.
And she was sitting across like a table from me. And she just goes, oh, Jess, you're having a hot flash. And I was like, how did you know? And she's like, I can feel it coming off you. I said,
Really?
you can't, I was like, you can't see me. I'm not saying anything. And she's like, no, I can just feel it, like it radiating off you. Um,
Do you sweat at all?
Oh yeah, you get completely flushed. Night
Yeah.
sweats was a terrible thing. And even now, like I because I have ADHD and I sometimes will be like, did I take my medicine today?
Yeah. Yeah.
If
I've been
I
there.
if I'm doubting it that I did, all I have to do is you wait like 2 or 3 days and I don't have the estrogen levels in my system anymore and I start having night sweats again.
Yeah. Well, I put all the pills in one of those pill containers, separated by days, and
I
that
set an
helps.
alarm on my phone now, so it
Yeah,
reminds me to
that's
take
another
it
way of
before I go
doing
to
it.
work.
Uh, how did you emotionally deal with that diagnosis of ovarian failure?
Um, like I said, the hardest part and one of the biggest reasons why I considered not doing the stem cell transplant is because I was 26. I did not have kids. I still don't have kids right now. I'm hoping to in the next couple of years. But I knew that is something that I really wanted.
Yeah,
Um, and it is very emotional to be told that you can't have children naturally. Um, Even though I had done all the work, and I've talked to a lot of like women who have dealt with the same thing.
yeah,
Um, and there's a big difference between saying you don't want kids and to saying you can't have kids.
yeah.
And the truth is, I at this point I could not conceive a child. They don't say it's impossible because they're like, if it does happen, we don't want you to sue us.
Yeah,
But realistically speaking, they said it won't happen. And so that was something that I took a lot of time just coming to terms with. I'm okay with it now. I've had a lot of great conversations with girlfriends in my life, and I know I can still have kids. I will hope be going the IVF route when I do. Um, but it is there's like a missing piece for sure when it's like you've something has been taken away. And I also really struggle with the term ovarian failure. That was a term that
it doesn't sound very appealing.
No, and it was co not to bash on male doctors. It was coined by a male doctor,
Yeah,
kind of like the term that when women are in labor and they use the term failure to progress.
yeah,
A lot of the terms in women's healthcare blame our bodies. And I said to be told that I was a failure after everything I had gone through and
yeah.
survived. I just said to hell with that. I'm like, I'm a badass. I survived MS. I've survived Legionnaire's disease.
You're a
I've run
warrior.
marathons. Like I've
Yeah,
gone through so much and you're calling me a
yeah.
failure. Um, so I really struggled even just with the terminology. I was like, I'm not a failure. And so I don't call it ovarian failure anymore. I call it retirement. It was something I chose to do, and my body just retired a little early.
Yeah.
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 And
Well,
I call it,
they
yeah.
told me they put me in menopause.
Yeah.
I don't know who came up with that one,
I
but
don't know. I've not heard that one, but
yeah, well, now you did.
yeah.
Now, what in your opinion do women out there need to know about hormone health?
I always say like the number one thing is learning how to advocate for yourself.
Yeah.
I have known a lot of women. I know someone who it took them 13 years to get an MS diagnosis because it took her 12 years to get an MRI.
Why
I
was
know
that? Because
because they just said like a lot of MS symptoms are sensory. There's numbness and tingling and all these things that fatigue that doctors might not take seriously, or you're tired, or you need to sleep. Like it's learning how to advocate for yourself and not take no when something's wrong.
yeah,
When it comes to hormone health, what I will say is a lot of doctors, it's not a priority when doctors, women's and hormone health is not a priority. Up here, we do have a fantastic menopause clinic that's like down the road from me. And I've been talking to my mom and I was like, you can always go there. Because there is a lot of research now being done on hormone health. They don't call it hormone replacement therapy anymore. It's like hormone menopause therapy. But hormones are pretty safe to be taking for women. It does help. You're supposed to, I believe the last event I went to, you're supposed to start them with kind of in 10 years of starting menopause. I also tell people like your food does make a difference.
yeah.
You need to be eating the right foods and like supporting your body. But the main thing is just learning to advocate for yourself and finding a doctor who is willing to listen to you and also knows what they're talking about. Because a lot of people don't know the menopause and they go based on the old school studies.
Now, at age 30, along comes a diagnosis of ADHD. How did you react to that, and how do you manage it now? And also, do you think it shaped your life in any way?
Yeah, so my ADHD diagnosis is funny. Like I said, I have my lovely fiance. His name is Chuck. He met me 3 months before my stem cell transplant. So he was with me for the whole egg harvest, the stem cell transplant, and then when I turned 30, he sent me one of those online quizzes that's like, "Do you have ADHD?"
Yeah.
And he sent me this quiz and he was like, "I think you should take this." And I was like, "I am feeling personally attacked, honey. What are you trying to say?" And then he's like, "I just want to know what you got on the quiz." And I was like, "I don't want to tell you." And he's like, "Did you?" And the quiz marker was if you scored like above 45, it was a high likelihood of ADHD. And I scored 67.
Uh-oh.
And I was like, I have never felt more personally attacked than by this quiz. And he's like, he's like, I love you either way, but it's just helpful information for you to know about yourself, and maybe you want to talk to your doctor. So I did. And up here in Canada, you talk to your family doctor, and then you get referred to a psychologist who will make the diagnosis and then send that back to your family doctor. And so we tried a couple of medications. I don't like the stimulants. And so we found I do take a medication every morning that ironically my neurologist prescribed that is helpful for hot flashes and sleep and also ADHD, and it's not a stimulant. So I take that every morning. And I focus on my diet and just having a really, really balanced um diet. And really it was eye-opening for me. It made a lot of things make sense. Like I was the child, my fiance, he came over to dinner one night with my parents and we were cleaning up the table and my dad started singing a song and then I started singing it back to him and then I started a song and he started singing it back to me and we were kind of like bouncing back and forth and I can't listen to a full song when I'm in the car. I have to get up every like half hour, 40 minutes at work and I do a lap at the office. Like there's all these little things. I got separated from students when I was a kid because I talked too much. Um,
Okay, so things were really, yeah, making sense.
yeah, so I was like, okay, yeah, this totally makes sense. And then when I started telling people my life, I went back home to Ontario and I had dinner with two of my two best friends since high school. I was like, guys, I got diagnosed with ADHD. And the response was like, shocker. That's such new information, Jazz. How did you not know this?
Oh,
And then other
wow.
people were just like, I just figured you knew you had it and we're living life okay with it. And I said, I had no idea. Nope, I just and it did make sense though. I run a Substack now called Wavelengths of Chaos and Resilience, and I write there every day. But I called it that because I've said I always felt like I was living life on a different wavelength, just a slightly different frequency than people.
Yeah.
And what made sense to me didn't really make sense to other people, and I'd make these leaps and people couldn't follow it. Or even like when I'm doing my MBA right now and they'll say you need to read this and I process information so quickly so I'll have read it and be done and I'm sitting there waiting for other people to kind of be on the same page as I am and I was like nothing made sense until I got the diagnosis.
Is the medication you're on helping you?
Yes, it's great. I sleep better. It's something I started fairly recently, just because I went to them and I said I don't like the stimulants. So I'm on week like 6. My fiance says my ADHD is not quite as well controlled, but you titrate this one up. So we'll see what happens when we get to the max dose.
Okay. Well, that's good. I'm glad it's helping. Now you're a strong advocate for women's health and self-advocacy in medical settings. What are some of the biggest challenges women face in healthcare today, and how can they push back?
So there's a lot of scary statistics. Women on average, I believe, they get their cancer diagnosis. It takes about 2 to 3 years longer. They're more likely to die from a heart attack than men are. None of the majority of drug trials out there don't involve women because our hormones propose like they're not something that is easy to kind of regulate and account for in the study. So a lot of the studies that we're doing or the medications we're taking were tested on men, and then they're just assuming it's going to work the same for women. So there's a lot of issues with our healthcare system today. Women's pain is not taken as seriously. Women often don't get as much pain medication and they're not believed. So the biggest thing that I always tell people to do is to push back. I have a very high drug tolerance, so I will tell people, they'll be like, oh, we'll give you like T3s. And I'm like, I'm not trying to get drugs, but like T3s don't work for my body. This is what I know works for my body.
So T3, you're talking about like Tylenol with codeine or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And so it's just knowing what works for you and really advocating for yourself. A lot of people, women especially, I think we're taught to be quiet and respectful. And you do have to push back. You have to make yourself heard. And if you're not being heard, go to a different doctor. Don't be afraid to get a second, third, fourth opinion. Find the person that you're comfortable with.
Right,
Because it does take longer for us to get diagnosed. It does
right.
take longer
And
for us
these
to get
and
treatment.
these things that you're just mentioning, I mean, they're across the board. You're talking about all countries, right? Not just
All countries.
Canada. Yeah.
No. The most of
Worldwide.
these statistics are actually American.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, plant-based nutrition plays a big role in your approach to health. How did you transition to a plant-based lifestyle, and what are some of the biggest misconceptions about it? There's people out there, want to hear this for sure.
Yeah, so I started a whole nutrition journey. So I did my degree in health science, and while I was doing that university degree, I took a nutrition class, fell in love with the idea of eating healthy to kind of help my own body. And so I started doing the nutrition class and the nutrition degree. So I have a second degree from the University of Western Ontario in nutrition. And the thing I struggled with when I was doing that degree was at the time I was following a diet that had been developed by a doctor in the States called Dr. Terry Walls for MS. It was essentially a more paleo style diet. So like you could have meat and veggies and there was no grains and no dairy. So that right there, I wasn't eating grains and I wasn't eating dairy. But everything in school, I had to compare my diet to the Canadian Food Guide, which had grains and dairy. And I felt like I was really trying to defend a diet that was very healthy. It's filled with vegetables. And so then I decided to get my holistic certification. That took me another 2 years. Um, and during that time, I met some animals. So I was at a farm and I met some of the animals, and I really struggled with seeing a difference between the cow and my dog. And my sister is actually vegetarian, so she would say the same thing. She met a cow named George. And then I moved out to Calgary, and my partner, my fiance.
The It's a Wrap with Rap podcast, guest and acclaimed Australian historical fiction thriller author Paul Rushworth Brown has just had his new book, Outback Odyssey, released. Paul is a true storyteller with a unique journey and a life filled with adventure and diverse experiences. From a foster home in England to a path leading him to playing soccer professionally in Canada in 1972, to reuniting with his father in 1982 in Australia, Paul honed his skills as an educator in 2002, but found his true passion and calling as a writer in 2015. Paul's historical fiction novels are a testament to his authenticity and grit, woven with unexpected twists and turns that will leave the reader breathless. With vivid narratives, he paints a realistic portrait of life in past decades, setting the stage for suspenseful, mysterious, and thrilling tales tinged with romance. Paul's latest novel, Outback Odyssey, will take you on an epic journey through 19th century Australia, blending historical adventure with a powerful mix of survival, identity, and the collision of cultures. This immersive tale follows the lives of those drawn to the vast, untamed land, some in search of opportunity, others fighting to protect what is rightfully theirs. At its heart, the book is about the story of Jimmy, a young Englishman seeking a new life in the Australian wilderness in the 1950s, which mirrors thousands of British immigrants who sought new opportunities in Australia in the wake of World War II, whereby the Australian government encouraged mass migration to bolster the workforce and expand rural settlements under the Populate or Perish initiative. Jimmy's story reflects the hopes, struggles, and cultural clashes experienced by these migrants as they navigated the complexities of their journey and new home. Through vivid storytelling, Outback Odyssey brings to life the breathtaking beauty and unforgiving harshness of the outback while exploring the struggles of those who call it home. It is a tale of friendship, betrayal, resilience, and love, woven with the profound questions of who belongs, what must be fought for, and what is truly worth saving. The book, Outback Odyssey, is available in bookstores and online.
Him and I both were having these discussions. We're like, we don't really need meat. We don't need it. Let's start cutting out meat. So I started by just cutting out meat and slowly cutting it out, slowly reducing. And then when I actually went through the stem cell transplant, I had cut out a lot of it, but I was still eating meat on occasion. It was a very gradual decline. Um, my mother and father were fantastic. I actually didn't eat a single hospital meal while I was in the hospital. They would call me every morning, and my mom would be like, "What do you want me to make you?" And she would bring it in, and then she would go home, and then my dad would bring me lunch, and then they'd both bring me dinner. So I never ate a single hospital meal. And every got 3 times a day, the guy who delivered the hospital meals would come in, and I was like, "You need to take it out. I'm gonna be so sick." And my body actually rejected all meat. I couldn't stomach it. It made me so sick. And then so I was like, you know what? My body is telling me I do not need this. I don't need
Yeah.
that. So I haven't had meat since.
Isn't it amazing when you're in a hospital and they bring you your tray and it's like full of sugar stuff and
Oh, it was
all
so
the stuff,
gross.
all
I
the
was
stuff
like,
that's bad for you?
I was like, I can't do this. And they're non-meat. One of the meals, the one day they're like, you can have a brick of cheese and a boiled egg. And I was like, how is this a balanced vegetarian meal? So my mom brought all my food. So that was kind of how I gave up. That was the nail in the coffin. I was like, I'm not eating any more meat. And I would say I was vegetarian for about 2 years. Um, And then I started doing more research into what happens in the dairy industry and what happens in the egg industry and all these things.
Yeah.
Um, and I just slowly started cutting it out. And now I call myself plant-based because the odd time my fiance is like, "Can we just have a pizza with normal cheese?" And I'm like, "Yeah, okay, let's get a pizza with normal cheese. I'll have it this one
No
night."
pepperoni though.
Nope, there's no pepperoni. There's no meat in our house. And because we built the house, meat has never been cooked in our house. There's been no meat in any of the dishes. So we're pretty, and he's on board. I mean, I cook all our meals, so he has no choice. But
He's on board. Okay.
yeah, he does not have any meat. And he says he feels better. And I feel way better eating a plant-based diet.
Uh, just a quick question. What's your opinion on doctors as far as their knowledge of nutrition?
Most doctors are not knowledgeable in nutrition.
Yeah.
I believe when you become a doctor, I haven't looked at it in years, but at the time that I looked at it, they take like an afternoon on nutrition, and it tends to be like eat your whole grains, eat your fruits and vegetables. This is what a calorie is. This is how many calories are a gram of protein, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's not looking at inflammatory foods and balancing and antioxidants and like what foods do what, and are good for what. It's kind of just like, here is your basic nutrition.
Yeah.
And I have seen a lot of doctors. Unfortunately, I did have a family member who had some major health issues and was not eating a healthy diet. And my mom asked the doctor what he thought she should do for her diet, and his response was just take your medicine. He didn't tell her to change it in the car. He was a cardiologist, and he didn't say make any healthy changes. He said take your medicine, it's fine.
Wow.
And I'm like, that's not fine. We should be changing our diet. We should be eating to optimize our
Well,
diet and
they're
our
just
health and build
they're
that
just
base.
not they're just not educated in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, through all your serious health battles, you've always managed to thrive. What are some of the key mindset shifts that have helped you stay so resilient? Because you've been through a lot, and
Yeah.
I'm talking to you now, and our audience is hearing you, and you've come through this. You didn't let this drag you down.
No, I have videos of my mom, my dad, and I in the hospital laughing. We've documented everything from the time I was 15. We called it Blue Gown Glory. I would have an MRI and we'd take selfies and make funny faces. Um, I remember when I got diagnosed, they said I had a brain tumor or I was diabetic, and neither were right. And I turned out to have MS. And I
Yeah.
said to my mom, I said, well, at least I'm not dying and I can have a chocolate bar. And it's just and I am writing a book, and one of the things I talk about is all the life lessons that I've learned. And the big one is attitude matters. So I do have photos of myself in the hospital, like fetal position, absolutely having a great like breakdown, crying, red face,
Well,
not
we're
clearly
all
not
human. We're all
having,
gonna we're all
yeah,
gonna go there for a
not
while.
having a good time.
Right.
But I also have like when I was in the hospital for the stem cell transplant, I asked them, I said, I need to go for a walk every morning. I can't just sit in this hotel room looking out at my room overlooked the physio gym where everyone was allowed to work out. I said, I can't watch that. So I would take my little pole and do a lap around the hospital outside before I started. And I just have a family who our motto was it could always be worse. Like, which sounds pretty insane when you're in the ICU with 10% use of your lungs. Like, it could be worse, but
Not
it could.
much, but it could be worse.
It could be worse. It could
Yeah.
be worse. And so it was just, I had my dad's mindset was like, I'll worry about it when it happens, when something else goes wrong. We were always prepared for something to go wrong because I tend to be the person, if it's going to go wrong, it's going to be me. Um, but it's just having the mindset it can always be worse. And
And that's what got you through.
yeah, could always be worse.
Now you're now a spin instructor on the bikes, I take it, right?
Yeah.
And a holistic nutrition coach. How do you approach movement and healthy eating in a way that's sustainable for people?
Yeah, so and I work, so first of all, when people come to my cycle class, I just turned 33 last week. And my playlist always ends with a Bon Jovi song. It's a Tabata to Bon Jovi. It is very high energy, classic rock, punk, fun music. And I start every class off saying the same three things. I ride with a different position on the bike because of my MS and just residual things. So I tell them this is a do as I say, not as I do. Don't mimic my position. I always say two, if you have to leave, you need to give me a thumbs up or I will follow you to the bathroom, and that gets awkward. And then I say three, I'm going to tell you what to do in this class, and you can do it or you can tell me to go to hell and modify it for your own. So I try to make the classes when I'm training people really approachable. And so far everybody gives me high fives and loves the classes. So it's all about, it's my job as the instructor. I come up with the workouts. I'm going to push you so that you get the best workout possible. But I also give cues and telling people to back off. If you're doing this, let's back off, so that people are not competing or trying to do something that's going to hurt them.
Yeah.
I always encourage people. So in our studio, it's like ride on the same bike because the bikes are different. So if you're gonna, don't worry about what anyone else is doing, compete with yourself, ride on the same bike every week. And then when I'm talking to them about their nutrition, I always say, I'm like, I could give you a meal plan that has kale in it, but if you hate kale, you're not going to stick with it.
Right.
I personally, I'm not a big salad person. I don't eat a lot of salads. I put stuff in my smoothie. So I have my greens every day in a smoothie. So I really like to work with the people and say, what do you absolutely hate? What do you absolutely love? Um, During the pandemic, I had a slice of birthday cake every single day. Every
Really?
single. Yep. I would walk it because I lived alone, and the only person I got to see was he was my boyfriend at the time, was him. And I worked virtually, and everybody was sad. And so every day, once a week, I would walk across the road to the grocery store. I would buy myself a birthday cake and I'd cut it into 7 slices. And I'd have a
Wow.
slice of cake every single night because I love cake.
Yeah.
I just balance that with healthy food. So I talk about moderation. I
And you
didn't,
work out. I mean, you're
I do,
expending
I work
calories.
out. I do teach Spanish. I box. I've been a boxer for 8 years. I'm getting back into running, but I want to have run a couple half marathons. I do want to do a full at some point just to prove I can. Um, but it's all about balance. And like, if you're gonna eat really healthy foods, it's great, but you can't have nothing that you love. Like, you can't just go completely cold turkey and have none of your favorites. And I happen to be a cake person. So during the pandemic, when everything was a mess, that's how I got through the pandemic. I
J-
would have a run in the morning and a slice of cake at night.
Just for fun, tell us what's a typical breakfast, lunch, and dinner that you eat.
So for breakfast, I tend to make myself either one of two things. I will have oatmeal.
Yeah.
I love my oatmeal. My oatmeal is high protein made with soy milk, on the stove with like fresh berries, and then I put some chocolate chips in it. Or I make a protein smoothie, and more often than not, it is a protein smoothie. Uh, my protein smoothies tend to be soy milk or pea milk because they're high protein. And for women who are in menopause, phytoestrogens are actually helpful. And so I tend to have a high protein smoothie, and I make one for my partner as well. And he just takes it to work.
How many
Lunch,
grams of protein is that? About 30 grams, maybe?
uh, 35.
Okay.
I finally found a vegan protein powder that I really like. And then it tends to be like a banana, or strawberries with lots of greens in it.
Okay.
So they're pretty simple. Lunch tends to be leftovers. So I tend to make a pretty balanced dinner, and I'll take whatever the leftovers are.
Okay.
So this week I did homemade gnocchi, or yeah, so I did gnocchi with a homemade pesto sauce. And then I did a baked tofu on top for protein. And then I will make that, I'll take it for lunch, and then I'll make another dinner the next night, and I'll take that for lunch the next day. Um, so tonight is a very easy night for dinner. I'm having yogurt and granola and some fresh fruit. But I do a lot of like vegan tacos, taco bowls, um, like chow mein, ramen, very easy but fun. I do share on my Substack like a recipe a week, and I share a sample meal plan every month that's free for
Oh,
people.
okay, good. We'll get into that. Now, you recently launched a Substack where you share your story more openly. Please tell our audience, for the people out there who don't know what a Substack is, what it is, and what inspired you to start writing, and what kind of conversations do you hope to spark?
Yeah, so a Substack is like a social media platform. And got onto Substack when I got rid of Instagram.
Okay.
I don't have Instagram. Like I have Instagram, but I didn't want to be on it every day. I don't have TikTok. I'm not really on Facebook that much. So Substack is just this really supportive social media where it's geared more towards writing and sharing more long form. So I blog every day. I have a post come out
Now, would
Mondays.
they go on a website to get this?
Yeah, so you can go. I have a website. So my website is just my name, www.jessicafalds.com. Um, And Falds is F as in Frank, AULD as in David, S as in Sam. And there's a link to my Substack, but you can just go on Substack. Um, it's called substack.com
Oh,
and you
okay.
can join. They're fantastic. My Substack is, like I said, is called Wavelengths of Chaos and Resilience. But it's fun. Like I said, on Mondays I call it Meatless Monday, and I have a vegan recipe come out. Twice a week, I tend to talk about health and advocacy or women's issues. So I've had posts come out about hormones, vaginal dryness, MS, diagnosing, like advocating for yourself, hot flashes, pretty much anything you can think about when it comes to women's health. 2 days a week, I post about like plant-based living. So I had one come out recently talking about protein because everyone asks me where I get my protein from,
Yeah.
and I tell them that broccoli has protein. I'm a little tongue in cheek, but so I talk about different plant-based stuff. And then on Fridays, I call it Fearless Fridays, and I have a cycle workout. So I have a playlist that everything gets linked to. And then I tell you it's a 45-minute workout. Here's the songs. Here's what you're going to do for each song. And it's just like I've talked to like a lot of women out there. Every day I share different tips. So I'll be like, this is my plant-based tip for the day, or this is my tip on ways to fight the patriarchy, or here's my tip on how to women's health, or women's health and nutrition. And so I just give different tips throughout the day and share different posts that I like, but it's a really supportive community. It's a lot more positive place than Instagram.
Okay. So it's leading into my next question, your contact information. Let me see if I have this right. You have a website, www.jessfalds, Faulds.com.
Jessica, I use my full name.
Okay, Jessica.
Yeah.
Okay, so for if you want to contact Jessica, it's www.jessicafalds.com. And then if they want to go to substack.com, how do they get a hold of you?
So I think you can search, I can check right now. So mine is called, it is called Wavelengths of Chaos and Resilience. Uh,
Wavelengths of, okay.
but you can also search Jess Falls there and it comes up.
Oh, it does.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So just Jess Falls,
Yeah.
Faulds. We're gonna put that in a podcast notes for people. And then is there a fee for going on Substack?
Nope, Substack is completely free.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yep, it's completely free. There is a so people can subscribe to me for free and they'll get like one meal plan a month and they get all my posts.
Yeah.
But when you pay a fee, then you get access to, I do a meal plan every week. I'm going to start in a couple weeks. I'm starting like a cooking with Jess session. So once a week we'll cook a meal together and it's like live and you'll get the recipes. So it's tiers. You can get
Is that like
everything
video?
free.
Is that like
Yep.
video? So a YouTube type thing or whatever?
Yeah, but it's all through the Substack platform.
Okay, okay. And that's substack.com. All right. Uh, I want to end with this. What is one piece of advice you would give to someone who is facing a difficult health diagnosis and feels lost in the system?
I would tell them to stay positive and start looking at what they can do for themselves. So for me, my diet and exercise journey was my way for fighting back. And so I always tell people, statistically speaking, at some point in your life, you will probably get sick. It doesn't matter if you're 20 or 80, something will go wrong. And so when you have a strong base, when you eat well, when you move your body, when you really focus on you, you're able to kind of hit that kind of like the ground running. So when I was younger and I didn't work out, I had a relapse. It took me about 8 months to recover from it. I had the same relapse 2 years later
Yeah,
after I started working out and changing my diet. My recovery was a couple weeks.
right.
And so I always tell people like if you're facing like an unknown diagnosis, do what you can to really take care of yourself and build your body so that it is able to fight back for you. And then just advocate and be prepared to fight when you have to advocate because some doctors, not all, but some doctors will just be like, well, this is what it is, and they'll write it off. And it might not be the right
Or
answer.
they could go in there and they're not in good shape, and the doctor would say, "Well, uh, you got aches and pains
Yeah,
because,
lose some weight.
yeah."
Yeah.
Uh, I can tell you in any audience, if you look at older people and you go to the gym, the ones that are working out every day, I'm one of them. I work out every day. I either go swimming or lift weights and the elliptical and that kind of stuff. They can be even 80 or 90. It doesn't matter. They're in
I
good
used
shape.
Yeah, I worked at when I was in university, I used to work at a gym for older people. So I was a trainer in a gym and the people you had to be at least 65 to go to this gym. It
Uh-huh.
was well, and we had a guy and his name was Chuck and he was 94.
Yeah.
He was a prisoner of war during World War II. And that man, he had a bit of a shuffle. He couldn't walk up fully straight, but he was in there on the leg press every week and he was healthy.
He was
Uh,
hanging in there.
he was hanging in, he was a fighter. And I tell people like even right now I'm dog sitting. I'm at my parents' house for the week. I'm dog sitting their two dogs and I've got my dog here. So my workouts are they're affected this week because I can't go for a bike. I can't do these things because I'm away from the day for the day already for work. Um, but we go for a morning walk for 45 minutes, and the first thing I do when I get home is I take him for a walk for 45 minutes. So we're still walking 8K a day.
Yeah.
And it's just it doesn't matter if you're starting with just walking. I don't even want to say just walking, start with walking, start where you can. Um, because it becomes a lot easier when your health starts being affected.
Yeah. And you have to make it part of your daily routine.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
mean, if you need some extra motivation, 3 dogs will get you out of the house.
Oh, yeah. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Jess, I want to thank you so much for being a guest and offering everyone inspiration to overcome whatever challenges they are facing. Your story will bring valuable information to everyone who hears it and hopefully gives those needing it the determination to go forward, face challenges head on as you did, and never give up. So, once again, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you.
And if you have comments or suggestions for the podcast, you can email me at it's a wrap with rap at gmail.com. Our Facebook group is It's a Wrap with Rap. We have about 2,000 members in there. It's a private group. So if you're on Facebook and you want to get in, just email me. Instagram, It's a Wrap with Rap podcast. We're on Twitter or X at Rapper, WRAPPER 130. YouTube is It's a Wrap with Rap, the podcast uncut. We do not edit it. And the website is it's a wrap with rap.com. I want to thank everyone for listening. And everyone, please stay safe. And for now, it's a wrap.